All right, so Codie Sanchez recently made a video about this amazing power washing business. And I don't know about you, if sometimes you watch these videos and you're like, what's the catch? Or is that like the real story behind it? Turns out I actually know about this power washing business. There's some things that weren't mentioned in the video. So I figured it would be helpful to just kind of go through and talk about some of those points because I'm actually really familiar with this power washing video. So let's jump in and let's kind of break down some of the things that weren't said in this video. Now, by the way, I'm a huge fan of Codie Sanchez. I watch her content all the time, and I think what she's doing is great. You guys don't know, right? Is as when making YouTube videos, there's a lot of times like a certain narrative that you're fitting with the videos. I would know because I make YouTube videos. And so sometimes the narrative doesn't necessarily give all of the details. I'm kind of a details guy, so I thought it'd be fun to go through it. So let's rock and roll.
2, 1.
Aaron went from working 18 hours a day, making $30,000 a year, to running a company that generates $800,000 a month in revenue. Let's break down how he did it and how we can steal his home.
So part of the reason why this business makes $800,000 in revenue is because it's actually a franchise. So the $800,000 a month in revenue is actually taking all of the sales of the franchise owners, counting for that.
Homework. But before we get into it, let's be honest. I don't think it's reasonable for you to think you could make $800K a month in power washing. This is going to vary wildly by your education, your success levels, your background, the amount of money you have, the market. So what we're going to get into today is
What's interesting is a lot of the times she doesn't say stuff like that in her videos. They probably asked her to say that because it's a franchise. And what people don't know about franchises, there's actually a lot of really strict laws because they're regulated by the FTC. So you can't just say a franchise is making $10 million if no one's actually making, that amount of money. So that's one of the cool things about, franchising overall.
What is reasonable? What can we actually expect in a business like this? Let's break it down. So tell me why power washing of all things.
So I looked at a ton of businesses all in the boring business space. And what I was looking for, I had a checklist. And I think anyone who's interested in buying a business needs to have a checklist of what they're looking for. So I wanted something that was recession resistant. So had either withstood the test of time or had the ability to withstand the test of time. I wanted something that had a massive total addressable market, residential and commercial customers.
So what's interesting about this is that, when most people think about franchises, they think of food like McDonald's and Taco Bell and all this stuff. Like most people don't even know that you can buy a power washing franchise.
What do you mean by high margins? Like we know small businesses, you typically run somewhere between 15 and 30% margins.
Yep.
What do you consider high margins in this
So
business?
I wanted something that was above 20%, 25% would be ideal. And the founders of this business operate between a 30 to 40% margin.
Amazing.
So for all of the people that say that you cannot make money owning a franchise or that the only person that makes money is a franchisor, come on, guys. I mean, I think any business, most entrepreneurs that you meet, if they can, pull out 20% margins in a business where you have a bunch of employees and infrastructure and different things like that, then you're pretty happy with, 20% margin or above.
Amazing, which basically means you get to make more mistakes because you have a little bit more cash cushion.
Right, and a lot of the people who start a business for the first time are going to make mistakes, and I want them to be able to cash flow while still making those mistakes.
Oh yeah, me too. Hollywood, beautiful, shiny career to boring businesses. What the hell happened?
Yeah, so I was working in Hollywood. I wanted to be a talent agent. Did that for years, was working with Academy Award-winning actors and Academy Award-nominated actors.
How much were you making at the time?
I was making $30,000 a year.
So you had no money, and then a friend came to you.
Yep, and he goes, hey, I work for this carpet cleaning business, and you should get into it. And I was like, carpet cleaning? He goes, no, trust me, we're growing locations nationwide, and I need your help growing and scaling this business.
So you start small, and the idea is...
So Aaron was in what's called franchise development for many years, which is franchise sales. And so he would help bring in new franchisees and was really, really good at that. So part of the reason why, and we're going to get to this later on in the video about how they have a couple hundred locations now. Part of that is because, oh, by the way, I didn't mention this. I've had Aaron on my podcast, or the Franchise Empire Show podcast. And so what I do know from talking to Aaron before we actually hit record on the podcast, is that he's the one that did all of the franchise development for this business, bringing on the first like 50 franchisees because he's really, really good at it. That's part of why they've been so successful and growing so quick, is because he's great at what he does.
Take a small, boring business,
Yep.
an everyday business, see if that works, and then let's scale it up.
Correct.
And then you got hooked on the dirty business.
I got hooked. I went from Hollywood to carpet cleaning and got hooked on it. We grew that. Then I went to drywall repair, then and grew the biggest drywall repair company. And then I was like, wait a minute, I can do this on my own. I could find a business that I believe in, and I could grow it, and I could buy it, and I could build teams. And I went to my wife. I said, I want to find a business and to acquire. I don't know which business yet. I'm going to raise capital. I don't have the capital yet. What are your thoughts?
Okay, before we get to the capital raising, I want to talk about.
So what's interesting is that this is a common thing these days that actually people are doing that are familiar with the franchise space, is that they'll actually go out, they'll find a business that's performing well, just a regular business, and then they'll negotiate buying the rights for the franchise business to be able to franchise it. And then they'll franchise the business and then use the success and track record of the previous business to recruit other franchisees. Pretty interesting.
About the business model, because it's so good. So we're going to tell you how to raise capital, how to do the next part. But first, let's talk about why you even thought you could raise somebody else's money to buy this business, because it's not so obvious. And I want to show you guys on a whiteboard. Huge whiteboard I want to show you guys. We're going to break it down like crazy. Oh, wait a second. The whiteboard is that big because the business model is not that complicated. One of my favorite things. So you want to start this in a weekend, 101 level version. How would you do it?
Okay, so this is the part of the video that I'm not a huge fan of, because it's a little bit misleading. I get what they're trying to do here. I think the intentions by Codie are good. She basically didn't want him to talk about this business being a franchise. I guess a lot of people don't like franchises. When they break this down, all these numbers, it's like if you were to go do it on your own and just go start it up. But that's not the way he did it, and that's not the way it works with franchisees. So actually, let's go through these numbers. I'll show you something. I'll pull up their actual startup costs for the franchise so you can see. Yeah, so let's take a look at this.
How much would it cost to, let's say, do a 3,000 square foot house pressure wash it?
$350 to $500.
Okay. How long would it take you if you were using a non-commercial grade power washer from Home Depot?
3 to 4 hours, probably.
How many could you do in a day?
2.
Okay,
two.
let's say we do 2. Okay. Maybe you could throw on some driveways for additional revenue. Maybe you're just doing driveways and you're charging them $100. Let's talk about labor. Well, in this case, labor's you, motherfucker. You're gonna be the one doing it.
Absolutely.
Oh, you. Chemicals. How much would that cost and what would we do?
Maybe $16 for a gallon of Clorox.
Breaking the bank. Probably a power washing. You could probably even rent a really early version from like Home Depot for a couple $100.
You could. One will cost you maybe $300 or $400 if you go starting.
You could rent some. Obviously, the scale's all the way up to big, huge commercial pressure washers. But right here, you've got a business where if you get, I don't know, I'm no mathematician here, but if you get 2 to 5 different clients, you're breaking even. You're doing some hard work though to do it.
Yeah,
no dirty
definitely.
business, no boring business is without hard work up front if you're going to scale it this way. Any other costs we're not thinking of right here?
Maybe a website, some business cards.
Tech, some swag, got a little logo right here. Maybe you're running over to one of those trade supply stores, putting on a jumpsuit. It's not even your own logo. We keep it really cheap. Let's call this something like $25. Let's call this $25. Bada boom, bada bing. You got a cleaning business. But this isn't actually what you did.
This is not what I did.
That is not what he did.
Break this down. Fascinating part about you is you fast-tracked your way into this existing business by finding an owner who had been in business for 34 years, and then you structured a really unique deal with them.
I did.
To be able to do what you do today. Can you explain that deal?
So I was looking for a business that was simple, easy to replicate, could work in any single market. And so I approached a 34-year-old power washing business. So I took their business, I did a rebrand, created this logo, and now we have 187 locations nationwide.
So wait a second. How many clients do you guys have now?
Thousands.
That must be really hard to manage.
It is.
Like you can't use a spreadsheet.
Absolutely not.
So you use a CRM?
Yes.
I use a CRM too. Actually, it's HubSpot.
I wasn't going to actually include this part in or on the HubSpot commercial, but by the way, HubSpot is absurdly expensive. We use a different CRM system, and I think we literally pay like $100 a month. We got a quote from HubSpot, and to use all the tools and everything that we want, you want to guess how much it was going to be? $6,000 a month. $6,000 a month to use a CRM system. Absolutely absurd and crazy. If you're using HubSpot, comment below, let me know. Or what CRM system do you use if you're in business? What CRM system do you like? We use Go High Level right now, but everyone who uses HubSpot swears by it. They say it's the best CRM system ever. But $6,000 a month is an employee. That's a full-time employee. It's crazy.
You had a really unique deal with them.
I did.
To be able to do what you do today. Can you explain that deal?
So I was looking for a business that was simple, replicate. So I upped this logo, and now we have 187 locations nationwide.
And when he says now we have 187 locations nationwide, again, the reason why they were able to grow so fast is because they brought on franchisees, right? They brought on other people who bought into the system. So to be able to scale this, if you were just the sole owner and to grow into 187 locations without having franchisees would be nearly impossible.
First, we got the same cost. It costs $350 to $500 to do a 3,000 square foot house, right? Now, how much time does it take you with all this?
25 to 30 minutes.
So we're way down from the 3 to 4 hours to 25 to 30 minutes. Now, let's talk about the number of jobs you can do per day.
4 to 5.
Okay, so we double the number of jobs per day. Now, let's talk about how much it costs to actually do that. How much does this truck cost?
We finance it. It's $2,000 roughly per month.
And then you've got your cost of chemicals, which if it was $16 before, let's say for Clorox, I guess this is like 1/5 because you have such a larger...
Yeah, I mean, it's 5% of the job roughly.
Okay, so you get a lot lower costs because you're buying its scale, kind of like Costco. All the same costs overhead, like websites and labor. What else are we not thinking about? Insurance for driving a truck like this.
Could be $600 or $700 a month per truck.
And then do you have to have licenses or certifications to drive this?
No, this is not a CDL.
Also, on top of that, you don't need a license to power wash somebody's house.
No, most states do not require any kind of licensing.
Are there some that do? Yeah, depends on what kind of job.
It depends on whether it's a government job and what kind of insurance you need, but we can just up the insurance for these jobs.
So the fascinating part, I think, with all these businesses is you can start a boring business cheaply and get your return on capital or the amount of money that you invest, you can get it back to you quickly, and then you can...
Sure, you can if you maybe you're doing it on your own, but part of what makes this business so successful is the branding, is the system, is the commercial equipment. That's why they're able to produce the numbers that they're able to produce, right? Is because they are a franchise and they have this replicatable system. So let's dive into actually the real startup costs of this business. If you're not familiar with franchises, they all have to file something called a franchise disclosure document, which is a public legal disclosure document where they have to put the real startup cost. If they're going to say franchise owners are making a certain amount of money, they have to disclose it in there. It's pretty interesting. So let's take a look at that. All right, so let's take a look at these startup costs. So this is their actual Rolling Suds actual franchise disclosure document. So what you can see here is their initial franchise fee is actually about $55,000, $54,900. Training expenses, that's like hotel, travel, all that stuff. Down payment on their vehicle is between 10 to 50 grand. So they'll show between a low amount and a high amount, as you can see here. And new business set, that is equipment, I believe. Lease, because you need to have like a little warehouse that you're renting for all of that giant equipment that you saw there. Shop kit inventory, vehicle financing, monthly payment is between $4,500 to $7,500. So that's multiple vehicles. You have some professional fees, an allocation for 3 months of advertising, insurance, and then a buffer that's included in the startup cost of $30,000 to $55,000 for startup costs. So to get this specific business and to be a franchisee of this business, the startup costs range between $182,000 to $290,000 to get this business up and open. Now, some of you may go, that's absolutely ridiculous. If I could go, start my own power washing business on my own, why in the world would I do that? Well, because there's a lot of people that they don't want to go out and get equipment from Home Depot, and they want a system. They want a proven system, just like the difference between someone starting their own little burger food truck or burger cart or their own burger restaurant versus buying a Burger King franchise or McDonald's franchise or so on and so forth. Sure, they could get it up and open a lot cheaper on their own, but they're buying the brand, they're buying the systems, they're buying into the support overall, right? So you might go, okay, well, what does this sort of business produce in terms of sales? Well, let's take a look at their numbers. So again, I told you that franchises have to disclose that. All right, so when we start looking at their numbers here, what's interesting is that they show average EBITDA. So if you're not familiar with this term, EBITDA is earnings before interest, depreciation, taxes, and amortization. I'm not going to break down what that all means in this video if you're not familiar with it. But essentially what it's meaning is profit, but there's more specifics to that term. So it says per full-time truck, which is an interesting way that they're showing it. So basically what they're saying is, okay, hey, let's look at 2023. In 2023, we made $422,000 per full-time truck. We made $373,000 per full-time truck in 2022, right? And they show that trend of those numbers. And what's cool is they show all of their different costs. They're disclosing all of the different costs per truck in this specific business, which is pretty interesting that they're showing it. And then they're showing that, okay, well, then they're disclosing what their actual, profit and percentage was for the business, and disclosing that. So then they show their actual overall sales and EBITDA, right? So in 2023, they did $2 million in gross revenue. They actually did more in 2022, did $2.2 million. So they had some interesting years, 1.8 in 2019. In 2020, they did 1.5 million. So obviously, that I would imagine that was from COVID, but they rebounded pretty quickly. And then, again, 2 million in 2023. You can see all the annual expenses that they had in the business. Oh, that's interesting. $60,000 for rent. So they're paying $5,000 a month, but they have a pretty substantial business. So you're probably not going to, starting out, get something, a warehouse or something that's $5,000 a month. And when we take a look, what's cool is that, so this was the corporate location, right? So these guys were the ones that started this actual business. It was not a franchise, but because they're disclosing all the numbers as if you were a franchise location, they have to then add in, okay, if you were paying royalties, you would have paid $160,000 in royalties. These are all the fees that you would have paid this is marketing spend. So that's just you spending on marketing. But these are all the fees that the brand fund, royalty, and other franchise related fees you would have paid. Total expenses would have been $1.3 million. They still would have done in that business $671,000 in EBITDA with a 33% margin, which is pretty wild. Then they jump into all sorts of things like their average job size, right? So that's really, really interesting that they start jumping into their average job size. So we're not going to get into all that in this video, but I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at and at least show you guys what their startup costs are, what their sales are, and how it works when you're looking into franchises overall. All right, so speaking of franchises, for those of you who are like, I never really considered franchising, but you'd like to kind of know what else is out there, we put together a PDF, a pretty sizable PDF and a whole video breakdown of 5 low-cost franchises that all make $1 million a year, backed by the data. And as you see, we have access to being able to pull all of the data for those franchises. So you can go to franchiseempire.com/low cost if you want to go grab that for free. franchiseempire.com/low cost.
Can get scale. Scale costs more upfront, but there's a lot more upside.
Right.
So let's talk about a commercial job really quick.
Sure.
So if you get $350 to $500 to do one house, how much could you get to do a commercial job?
I mean, we've done $20,000 parking garages. We've got recurring contracts with different fast food restaurants. We do annual contracts. I mean, that's really where our focus is.
So basically the idea is,
so that's a pretty cool part about this business. You got recurring revenue, you get $20,000 a year contracts. That's it's pretty interesting. All right, so if you thought the breakdown of this video was interesting and either you're interested in this specific franchise or you just you're now wondering like, hey, what sort of franchises are available in my area, in my market that might match my skill sets and all that stuff, you can go to franchiseempire.com/check territory, and you can actually schedule a call with our team, and we'll talk to you a little bit about your situation, skill sets, etc., and be able to see what franchises are even available in your specific market. Now, if you're not familiar with franchises have a net worth requirement. So you do need to have bare minimum net worth of $150,000. You need to have access to $50,000 somewhere, either in retirement account or home equity, access to $50,000 somehow. Most of the clients that we work with, our ideal clients, have a net worth of somewhere between $300,000 to $500,000, and a lot of the clients that we work with actually have net worths of or they're millionaires. So I get it. Yes, franchising is not the most accessible thing for everyone, but the cool thing is if you're in a position where you can qualify, you don't have to worry about starting a business from scratch. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like. Make sure you subscribe before you go. And we're gonna do, if you like this style, let me know in the comments. We'll do more breakdowns and reaction videos like this.